guys, welcome to Soul Wanderings. I am AJ,
And I am Natalie.
and we're your hosts for this beautiful, intentional hangout. Hi,
That's right.
welcome. I have a little bit of a different background. I'm hiding. I'm in an undisclosed location for a couple of days, hiding away from the world.
Finding your peace.
I'm working on finding my peace, man. Geez, when you're on this journey, I've got nap hair, windblown hair, taking it easy hair. Yeah,
Good.
very little have I done today. Yay for the opportunity. How are you?
I'm good. Let's see. I did a few more things. Oh, there was quite a rainstorm today, so got a little water. Water takes the path of least resistance. So it's really amazing when there so much water comes out of the sky, how it can get
Mhm.
into a house in these little tiny cracks or whatever. I was like, oh, wait, there's like water down my stairs, basement stairs.
Oh
Wasn't really
no.
significant. It was just interesting to um so I'm aware that if my backyard flooded in that particular spot, there would be water in my basement.
That's good to
It's
know.
it's good to know.
Thank you for the information.
Yes, there was that. I was like, wow, there was so much water dumped out of the sky this
Yeah.
morning. And then I didn't start till later this afternoon, so it was nice to take a kind of easy flow
Good.
of my day.
Good. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I need that for you too.
Oh, I have to say that I've slowed down a little bit over the last few weeks, and it's kind of nice to feel like coming to myself in a different way.
Mm,
Even though I didn't take like a complete break, it's kind of nice to have a throttled back time. So
yeah.
I appreciate that because I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize I was just not really, it's just a little bit different flow now. So,
Mhm.
which is nice.
Yeah. And I've observed that in you. It's
Yeah.
really neat to see you on the other side. Yeah. Way good job.
Hold on tight through the difficult times in your life. There's another side.
Mm, yeah. I don't know what I don't know what's happening. Other than my bangs are in my eyeballs and it's driving me crazy. I don't know. Here we are. Yeah, so that's like part of all of the growth, right? Like um sometimes it's really heavy and we don't realize like how heavy it's been and how much weight we've been carrying until we process through that and work through that and come on the other side of it and we're like,
Right.
"Whoa, what was that? What did I just go through? How did I experience that?"
And for
It's
me personally, people have said, "Wow, I've been worried about you," and I'm like, "You have been. I'm just okay.
you're like, "I'm making it through. I'm
I
finding
just,
a way."
yeah, just making it through." But then there's some awareness when people will say, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I was really, I'm in the thick of."
Yeah.
There's, we gain awareness by feedback loops too, which often come from the people that are around us that can see us differently than we can see ourselves.
Yep.
And there is something about being beyond the in the middle of it.
Mhm.
You can't fully process any experience in the middle of an experience. You experiences really do have to be lived lived through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is part of how they say um, you've got to go in to get out, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
All the little sayings that are similar to that. The only way out is in. Just like, yes, okay,
Oh,
we get the point. We get the point. It's a thing.
yes.
Before we go on too further, let's just share really quick. If you guys are new to the show, this is Soul Wanderings, and we've been doing this for many, many years. We have just joined the YouTube world on our own this year, and so we're still very new here. Where we previously had the fortunate opportunity to be with a radio station that um, was really good to us. We had a great time there and now we are venturing out and doing the thing So if you want to learn more about us, visit soulwanderings.com. You can learn more about both of us there. Also, during the day, we hang out at a place called Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. Uh, ooh, the magic that happens in those walls. We get to have a lot of people through their healing journey, grief journey, spiritual journey, mental health journey, whatever it looks like for you. We do a lot of really awesome things that in that regards in order to assist you in that way. So if you are local and even if you're not, there's some long distance opportunities. Check out vibesnow.com, VIBEZ. And then if you guys have a show topic, because we pick show topics every week based on what we are going through, what we're experiencing, what we see the collective experiencing, or our clients, or as a request by you, you can email those to us at connect@soulwanderings.com. So, yeah, tonight we're going to talk about childhood trauma. It's a heavy topic.
It is.
It is a heavy topic. And, we do stay optimistic, but we are realistic at the same time. And I would say the majority of people I know carry some level of childhood trauma. And so I feel like it's a very important topic for us to discuss and talk about. And hopefully you will gain some clarity in the information that comes through with our conversation, or we can support you somehow in your journey of healing through trauma because yay, it gets carried on into our adulthood.
Mhm.
And, part of the healing journey is all of its layers. And one of those layers is called trauma. And trauma can be broken down in many different forms. And one of those ways is childhood, where it all began. Where it all began. So, yeah.
Yeah. How should
What
we do
what do you
this?
have to say about our topic?
I was filling on this, of course,
Mhm.
knowing that this was coming up. Um, I definitely have a different perspective um, of my childhood now as an adult and the age that I am versus when I was a very, very young adult. Um, and I thought that I had a difficult, maybe even some trauma in my childhood. Um, I don't really feel that way anymore because I've had a significant exposure to people that had much different childhoods than mine, and so I consider myself lucky because I don't think that I really experienced a significant amount of childhood trauma in comparison to what I've heard from people that I've worked with and people that I know. I was like, wow, that was not I did not have to go through those different things. So I I have had things that could be considered traumatic, but on the level of what I've seen with other people and worked with people to heal, I feel a lot of gratitude for my childhood. So I was feeling this today. My personal childhood was not necessarily easy, and there was a lot. So I would consider my childhood more character building because we had goats and chickens and sort of homesteady ish. So it's homesteading is much more of a thing these days. And it wasn't necessarily when I was a kid, but we did that kind of thing, having to do chores and milk goats and take care of animals and not having a lot of money and that kind of thing that I always thought was really bad, but it's not. What I've seen professionally was that you
No, because I'm like, that sounds kind of traumatic to me, actually. I don't want to take care of animals all day. Love them from a distance.
I have to get up in the morning and do that before school. That sounds traumatic.
Sounds traumatic to me.
Well, maybe I just don't. Maybe that's a good thing to think of. It's like maybe we don't realize what was traumatic in a way.
Yeah.
Um, I did have some difficult situations just because we didn't have a lot of money. So um, there were some bullying and taunting that I experienced in school because of the way I dressed, because I was thrift store shopper. and
Mm.
wearing things that I thought were really nice, but were not like, Mean Girls.
Yeah,
Remember some Mean Girls stuff?
they're still very alive and well.
Mm, yes. That maybe it's because I've done some healing. So when I talking about this now, bringing up some of those situations that were very painful moments in my life that aren't painful anymore, put into perspective with the adult. As we grow older, we can put what happened to us when we were younger into a different perspective, which can do the healing. But wow, is inner child work powerful? It's so
Absolutely.
beautiful.
It
So
can be.
beautiful. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
it definitely can be.
So, what about you?
So childhood trauma. Yeah, I've carried around that backpack most of my life. Definitely. I had a very challenging childhood because my parents were still kids, having kids, and they had a lot of trauma growing up. And so, they only knew what they knew and they knew it. And our lives are much different now, thank goodness. But unfortunately, yeah, I experienced quite a bit when I was growing up. I'd be one of those people that you'd hear about stuff and be like, "Wait, what?" And you're like somewhat like I'm not nor I don't feel like I'm normal, but you wouldn't understand the level of trauma I have endured in my lifetime just knowing me and how I am today. Because I've opted in to the work and really diving into the healing because I've had the repercussions of the childhood trauma manifest in ways in relationships with myself, with others, with life in general. And they were so uncomfortable and so unsatisfying that, I got to a point in my life where I was like, "Kate, what is going on? What's wrong with me?" Not understanding at the time, you went through a lot of things.
Hmm.
And that carries on in your body, not just mentally and emotionally, but physically. And so, especially the last 10 years, but more specifically, I would say like 8, 9 years, I've really been diving in deep into why I act the way I act, why I believe the things that I believe. And a lot of them are directly related to an experience I had as a child. So it's very interesting. I even believe, um, you know, quite a few of my health diagnoses are related to traumatic experiences, not just specifically one, but the whole encompassing of it all. And so it is a significant thing that I have focused on, and I have made it one of my life's purposes to help other people in the same way that I've been able to help myself or seek the help that I needed for myself. So, one of the biggest services that I offer is trauma healing and emotional release. And it's because I have a deep understanding of what that looks like and feels like from my point of view. Right? Everyone has their own experiences and what trauma can look like. Because what may show up as trauma to um, someone may not look like that to someone else. Just like you getting up early to have to feed animals, all jokes aside, I don't see that as traumatic in the way that trauma
No.
exists, but some people could, right? And so some people could have taken that very seriously and thought, maybe they have a fear of animals. Maybe they were locked in a room with an unruly goat. I don't know. Things happen all of the time that cause traumatic experiences. And
I
so,
did get bucked off a horse, so that was something.
yeah, thank you. That does not sound like a good time to me.
No, my dad fell on top of me. That was not fun either.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. And what's also really cool is a lot of people um oh, see, I was just about to talk about this. Joe says one thing about me is I had the most awesome childhood and parents any kid could ask for. I was just going to say, one thing is like some people don't have childhood trauma, and so they're not affected in the same way, but they'll enter into relationships with people who have had it. And that can be very traumatic for them. But also, just interacting with people in general, we all carry some level of trauma, whether it happened in our childhood, in our young adulthood, or in our adulthood. It's just part of life. Like nobody gets out of this trauma timeline. It's part of the human experience. It's part of what we get to go through in order to become who we're meant to become. So I really believe that everything is intentional, no matter how horrific and horrible it is. And there is something that we get to learn from it, good, bad, or indifferent, always. That's how I feel.
She takes a breath. It's like all that.
Yeah. And I was also reading, I was multitasking and reading comments.
Mm-hmm.
Charles has a question. Does healing childhood trauma need us to forgive others and ourselves to climb out of the victim trap? That's a really great question, Charles. I'll answer from my awareness. Forgiveness is one of the biggest healers, period. Period. Do you have to forgive others in order to climb out of a victim trap? No. I would say no, you don't have to do anything. It looks different for everybody. But I would say if you want the deep level of healing that is required for you to completely ascend past the experience, yes. What would you feel, Natalie?
So I take the word forgive and I pull it apart a little bit and say the for as used in prior, FORE, that word for, and then give, to give as before. And so that's the aspect I see with forgiveness, especially in healing with the trauma. You're able to then, it's not like you get to go and be the person that you was before. You get to, through a healed aspect, give as you would have given before the trauma.
Mm.
So I see that forgiving is, we've talked about this before, but it's definitely a selfish act of saying, I just don't want to carry this in my backpack anymore. So I'm going to forgive, and I'm just going to heal
Mm-hmm.
and accept and integrate the experience into what I've learned, into a learning aspect versus a victimization or any of those other things. And then you're able to give from those spaces. You're able to connect with people like I've seen what you are able to do. Connect with people because you've been through it. You can be in the and holding space for someone that's been through something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just this connection. There's a kinship that comes
Right.
from shared experiences.
I agree.
And thank goodness for the kinship, because without that, the healing, I feel like it's important. Like what I do with meeting, everybody meets in this space where grief is a kinship, it's just an automatic kinship because everybody's grieving in an aspect.
Mm.
So if you can meet in that, then it said, oh, I really am not alone in my human experience. I may have
Right.
been the only one that experienced what I experienced, but I'm not alone in experiencing
Right.
difficult, traumatic things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. You always have such a unique perspective. I really appreciate that. I also really feel like because I've experienced the power of forgiveness, that it is one of the most important things for me through my healing journey has been to forgive. And it's not just forgive, just heal, just move on for me. It hasn't been like that. And also I haven't been the kind of person who has been like, well, because this happened to me, this is why I act the way I act.
Mm.
It's never been acceptable for me. And a lot of that has been because I've had I haven't had. I have chosen to, number one, forgive myself for the things I didn't know when I was younger, that the reason why I made a lot of the decisions that I made was because of trauma. And
Mhm.
a lot of the characteristics that I had, like my character, were because of trauma. And so just forgiving myself for not knowing what I didn't know, right? And so I think that's one of the biggest things. In all reality, it's not just about forgiving the other person, it's also forgiving yourself for believing all of the things that were said to you, or that you deserved all of the things that happened to you. That's one of the biggest signatures that happen to people who carry the childhood trauma is, um, you know, they carry around these end results because of the trauma that they went through. A lot of times that they can even remember their childhood, because that's one of the things with childhood trauma. A lot of people just don't remember their childhood.
Right.
They've checked out of it so much that you ask to, have one of their favorite memories, and they're like, I honestly don't remember my childhood. But also they become super sensitive and on edge. Like they can walk into a room and read it automatically because they just have like this hypersensitivity and awareness that if someone's in a bad mood, they're going to do all of these things that are even out of character for them, but in order to protect themselves, to make them safe, like, oh, I'm sorry, or not get in the way, or can
Mm.
I do that? Like over compensation, right? Over apologizing, over existing, period, because you just feel like you're in the way, or that you shouldn't have spoke, or whatever reason that you're having or experiencing the childhood trauma, it it becomes what I believe they refer to as invisible trauma, because you don't understand that it came from a traumatic place, the way that you act. So you'll find yourself in situations where it's difficult for you to speak up because you're living in fear of what the reaction or the result of your truth would be. Um, and when people ask you, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? You don't feel safe in being authentic because, one, you're uncomfortable with expressing how you truly feel, and and it's just really awkward when people pay that much attention to you that's positive, because you don't know how to react to that. That's not the norm, right? And another thing that I've noticed for myself through the trauma is imposter syndrome, right? Like you're capable of doing all of these things and you may be doing them, but you downplay the greatness of them, or you downplay yourself because you don't want the attention, or you don't think that you're worthy or deserving of the attention. And adding on to that, also just like the difficulty of just expressing your emotions in general, because you've been so used to just keeping them to yourself or hiding them away.
Mhm.
And it puts you in this really crazy place. I don't even know how to explain it, but the bouts of like loneliness that you feel in those places is so significant and so traumatizing just in itself, right? Because you feel so lonely and like nobody understands, or no one would trust you if you told them, or no one would understand your feelings, whatever that looked like. But also, you opt for, um, you know, you opt for experiences of isolation instead of joining in crowds of activity, even though you're lonely, because it just feels more safe. And heaven forbid that you go be your authentic self, because you just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah. There's so many layers to.
There's so many layers. See, I could go on and on. I mean, those are just ones that
Mhm.
are coming to my mind right now. But seriously, like trauma affects us in so many ways that I don't think a lot of us even understand, like what we're carrying around with us, and um, how it manifests in like our partnerships, our business, romantic relationships, our relationships with our kids, with our parents as we're all adults.
Mhm.
Like, just there's just so many layers and layers to childhood trauma that we could get into. Before I move on, is there anything you want to add to anything that I just said?
There was.
And then AJ just kept talking.
Well, it's okay because it's a flow of a conversation. Um, One thing that I want to say, whether it's adding to what you are or going a different direction, is that there's no time machine. So what has been lived out has been lived out. There's
Right.
no going back and changing what happened. So healing from traumatic experiences isn't about changing it. So a lot of times people hold on, and depending on what the situation is, or the traumatic experience, or the abuse, or the psychological things, whatever that is, um, can't be undone.
Mhm.
And and so there's this integration or the healing from it, or rewriting the story a little bit. These are aspects of it. So if I talk long enough, I'll remember what it was. So I remember what it was. So trust is so often damaged. So then it ends up being inability to trust, closing down, like, so the things that you were talking about, the isolation. And a lot of that comes from, um, since we can't see anyone else's inside. This just happened. There was a client, and my office, in my office, there's a door where you can see outside. And there's people that walk by to go to other businesses. And there was this gentleman that walked by who was smartly dressed. And he's going to a meeting that's close by. Smartly dressed man with his own stuff going on because he's going to attend to a meeting to do his own healing, because that's what happens on Wednesday nights around here. People go, and so that we can't ever see what's going on inside any other person. Like,
Mhm.
we feel and experience the inside of us. So there's a natural aloneness to being encased in a body. We're a soul riding around in a body that's its own spaceship that only we know about the inside scope of that. So the
Mhm.
aloneness often comes from that. And since many times people, and we live in a culture that doesn't talk about the poverty and the lack and the difficult things naturally, it's not just this open space for that type of conversation. But people can have their bitches and their moans and those B&M things, but they're not often talking about it in that vulnerable, more authentic way. We want to be our
Right.
authentic self, but morally to the sunny side instead of. So learning how to, so the trust gets shut down, and then we find that we don't always trust other people to be able to hear us, for us to be able to
Mhm.
articulate. And oftentimes because trauma often comes from people that could be from family members or close proximity, then talking about something's going to get someone in trouble, or there's a blow up from all that. So trust is a big aspect that gets
Mhm.
shut down in childhood trauma, and
Yeah.
cracking that back open kids is work.
Yeah.
It's work to heal, to know that not everyone is going to behave like people that that traumatized us.
Right.
There's a whole world of people that would never behave that way.
Right. Right. Although we see a high percentage of people who have gone through the trauma, there definitely are people who did not have those experiences.
Right.
Like, but also that's an experience in of itself too, right?
Yes. And then, along those lines, the people that didn't have really, really difficult doesn't mean that they didn't have something that they feel is traumatizing.
Right.
It's all a perspective of things. What they'll have a different story that was difficult situations. Maybe they felt that there was some trauma coming from
Mhm.
that. But then if they're talking about their stuff to someone that had much more difficult stuff, there's this disparity. There's this a little bit of a disconnect. But what is difficult for someone is what's difficult for them.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever heard of the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experience study?
And
It's like a test
maybe,
that
yes,
like therapists will give to clients to see their level of childhood trauma.
when they rank them or have a score from it.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I just wanted to go over some of the questions because a lot of people, and the only reason I want to do this, and it may be triggering for some. So if you feel you may get triggered by a question, I'm just going to put that disclaimer out there because sometimes questions can trigger people. If you feel
Mhm.
like that's going to be a thing for you, just pass this next series, this next section by.
Put us on mute.
Yeah. um So, yeah, because questions can be triggering. But the reason why I went and looked up this study or this test because I remember taking it a while back when I was in therapy, um, and my score was really high, and I didn't understand that I was carrying any of that with me.
Mhm.
Right? I just thought, well, that's my personality, or I just act that way because I was told to act that way, or whatever reason I had at the time. I didn't understand why I was having those experiences for myself because I didn't know that what I had gone through was childhood trauma because people went through hard things and it was just life. Like what I went through may not have been anything close to what I know some of my friends went through. Like, I'll tell you, one time, I remember, like, I had a wake-up call. I was in junior high. I got into some trouble. I grew up really fast. I did a lot of crazy things, but anyway, I ended up in the back of a police car, and I was, like, 13, 14 years old. I wasn't very old, and, it was just because I was at a party. It was underage. It was just really stupid. Um, anyway, my mom got a call from the cop, and my mom was like, "She's not coming home. She won't make it if she comes home." She needs to go to her friend's house where she was supposed to be going to and not this party. So we ended up going back to my friend's house. And when we got there, her dad literally lost his cool, got physical with her, and we left. And I remember thinking, like, I haven't gone through anything that remotely looked like what she just went through and what I witnessed. And it wasn't a comparison or like my life's better than hers, but it was like this wake up call in the ways that I had gone through a lot of things that were really horrible, and so did she. And so it just must be something that everyone goes through,
Mhm.
right? Parents are supposed to be strict. They're supposed to discipline you. They smack your butt when you're in trouble. Like things like that I just thought were normal. And so when that happened, I had like a, whoa, okay, yeah, that I'm not the only person who has gone through things. And also, that was really extreme. It was pretty traumatic to witness, and then, just the whole night. And I just remember thinking, I'm never gonna forget this moment, and I haven't. Like, it has stayed with me, and I know, like, that was, like, the least of my traumatic experience. Like, that was nothing compared to the things I have been through, but that has always stuck with me. So, like, if I had gone through things, so did you. Like I was no different. And so it didn't occur to me that what I was carrying around with me was trauma. It's just life. Right. And so it wasn't until I was way into my adulthood that I was like, I think there's something going on with me. Like what I'm feeling and doing is not normal. Like people are pointing it out to me, like, why do you say that? Why do you think that? I start getting asked these questions, and it was in 2009. I was in a 90-day mind and body transformation program because I felt awful. And I didn't know why I was so sad and so unhappy and why my life just wasn't working out. Well, I didn't know. Like, I just didn't know how to do life. I wasn't taught how to do life in a healthy way.
Mhm.
Anyway, it's just interesting, like the roads you go down. So, therapy, there's 10 questions that get asked in this adverse childhood experiences test. And again, I've been
Trigger
jabbering on,
warning.
but now I'm going to really ask the questions. So, according to the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, the rougher your childhood, the higher your score is likely to be, and your risk for um, problems later on in life as an adult or health wise are higher risk, right? So, um, you guys can grab a pen and paper and keep score or just keep it mentally if you want. But if you're carrying some level of childhood trauma that you were unaware of, this is a good way to find out. I mean, it's used with the CDC. I don't trust the CDC, but it's a study that came out in 1995 by the CDC, and so there's some level of scientific research, right? So a score from 0 to 3 puts an individual at low risk for the health concerns associated with adverse childhood experiences. And those who have like a 7, I think it was 7 or more, were 5 times more likely than those, um, obviously, with the lower score to develop mental and physical and emotional concerns. Um, And that is an increased risk for all kinds of things like suicidal tendencies, drug addictions, being abusive themselves, alcoholism, all kinds of stuff. So, before your 18th birthday, these are questions. Before your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often either swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Question number 1. If it's a yes, it's a 1. 0. Just keep track. Number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often A, push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? 3, did an adult or a person at least 5 years or older than you ever, and I'm not going to go through all of the details of this. I'm just going to say ever get physical with you in a sexual way. You guys can insert whatever you need to insert there. Um, Number 4, did you often or very often feel that A, no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or B, your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? 5, do you often or very often feel that A, you didn't have enough to eat, hold, I apologize. You didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Or B, your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? 7, was your partner, or I'm sorry, your parent or your caregiver often or very often, so, a parent or step parent, or either one of them ever pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at him or her? Or B, sometimes, often, or very often kicked, bit, and hit with a fist or hit with something hard? Or C, ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a knife or a gun? And 8, do you live with anyone who has a problem with alcohol or drugs? 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And 10, did any of your household members go to prison? So if you scored a 4 or more, you went through a lot during your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And you get into the 7, 8 range, you have traumatic childhood experiences. And that's the thing about it. And I want to add a caveat to all of that, because there's a lot that goes on in households. There's a lot that goes on outside of households as well. That's very traumatic for you as a child. Like if you think about like community violence, or racism, like, or I don't, I don't even like saying that word, any racial anything. Natural disasters, like if you had a house fire or flood or something like that. Um, or there's other things that are very traumatic outside of that, that have nothing to do with your family, but that you went through based on someone else before you were 18. And so just like take all of that into consideration. Like you may have downplayed a lot of that because, oh, that's just my family, they're dysfunctional. But you don't understand like the frequency that you've carried inside of your body all of this time, that's wreaking havoc on your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and your mental and emotional health, because you've just been unaware. Right. And so those things manifest into dis-ease, as we've talked about before.
Wow. That's an intense list.
Yeah, it's a little more detailed than that, but for the sake
Sure. That's the simplified version.
simplified version. Unfortunately, um, if you come from the place that a lot of us in the spiritual world come from, that we choose our lives and we choose our parents and we choose our experiences before we get here, to wrap your head around the fact that these horrible things took place in your childhood and now you're doing the cleanup work, and not coming from a place of anger and resentment. Like think about that. Like if you believe that this was all planned ahead, and all of the emotions that come along with why would I have chosen that for, some of it is really, really awful. From a spiritual point of view, what would you feel about choosing those growth opportunities versus something that would be a little less?
So I'm going to answer it like this, which is a little twist. So the spiritual community said it was all constructed and chosen prior, like with insight that it was going to happen. I'm going to say that when you are on the spiritual journey, there is the growth opportunity. So it's post-traumatic growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna answer it from a perspective of post-traumatic growth. So because you went through those things were given to you to be wise or growth oriented after the fact. The growth is going to come after the fact. And then I want to say something about the culture that's basically given to us and given to our parents and our family. So every family has a culture, and it's not a conscious thing. It's actually just woven into the fabric of being, and then it's passed on and passed on. So a lot of that is just given to us and given to our parents. And so we would like people to be far more self-aware than they just generally are.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a wise man that once said, forgive them because they don't know what they do. And it's so often true. They don't, if they knew how to get beyond it, I'm sure that they would know how to get there.
Yeah.
And if you're on your spiritual journey, then the challenge is yours to get where you wish that they would have done. Are you willing to do the things that you wish that they would have done? Often I find that people say, I would like to have my someone, spouse, parent, whatever, like do all the healing work. And it's like, well, you're the one that's being called to do it. So your challenge is to do it. And if you heal, they heal.
Mm-hmm.
It really does work that way.
Yeah. And side note, next week we'll be talking about, like, we'll be adding on to this childhood trauma and talk about generational healing. So this is kind of a two-part show in a lot of ways.
Yes, it is in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So that's where I come from
Mhm.
that perspective that said post-traumatic healing is very much an aspect, um, the ability to heal after the trauma is great. It's
Mhm.
there. Um, and oftentimes this cannot be done just by yourself.
Oh, no.
Yes, I
There's
like
no
that.
way I could have made it as far as I have by myself. I really love the ability for other people to be authentic and vulnerable with me, and for the lack of a better word, like, call me out. Like, I see this in you. Have you ever considered, you know? Doesn't have to be mean. It doesn't have to
No.
be traumatizing more. Look at this comment that Charles posted. Do you want to read that?
Is pain the fertilizer for empathy? And I would say simple answer, yes. It definitely um, is an aspect of empathy is to understand or to touch the sensitive place in you that has been through pain,
Mhm.
to be empathetic to another person going through
Yeah.
their own pain. I'm not sure it's as easy to be really true, as deeply empathic to someone if you haven't been through it. A person that didn't have um, a difficult child, like didn't answer. I mean, I didn't answer a bunch of those questions. Can't truly understand. Can't truly be empathetic if
Very
you
good.
haven't been through it, because we're experiential beings. We understand deeply what we experience
Right.
and less deeply what we haven't.
Right. Very good point. Joe is asking, I'm a bit conflicted though, because it's how each individual perceives the trauma, isn't it?
Um, yes, but perception is quite a topic, or is quite a concept to pull apart, because perception is so skewed, especially when we're talking about a child. So fully, our frontal lobe doesn't even, we don't even, I'm not exactly sure where
I
through the
think it's
childhood that
25,
where
27.
the fully developed frontal lobe, but even so, most children, especially under 7, don't have a global perspective anyway. So the
Mhm.
perception of a child is not a good read. That's why things could be perceived as traumatic by a kid. What can be just if your parent yelled at you
Mhm.
or raised their voice, a child could be traumatized by that when it was not put in a global perspective.
Mhm.
So that's the aspect of doing the inner child work, where you as an adult can support your younger self because you know what your younger self needed for that moment because it's in you.
Oh, okay. How about next week we talk about reparenting and the inner child work,
That's a good
and then
idea.
let's talk about the generational healing,
That's good.
because that's a whole other topic, and that is, reparenting has been so substantial for me,
Mm.
and I think a lot of people just aren't even aware of what that is or what that looks like, and I feel
Yes,
like it goes hand
I've
in
been
hand.
um I've been surprised sometimes. I failed to take age into consideration. It's I find that a lot of times people don't realize that. I've been surprised that there's parents that don't have a comprehension of developmental stages for children. I don't know that it's definitely not taught to everyone that children go through these phases and they don't even have a global perspective until a particular age. So a lot of times parents will be expecting their little ones to have this perspective. Don't you understand what how that affects everyone around you? No, they don't.
Mhm. Yeah. And also like the timeline in which you're born with your other siblings too.
Hmm. Yes.
Because just because, like, say I'm the oldest out of 6, but both my parents have been married 3 times each. And just like those intricacies of different relationships and being placed in different order, like everyone had a different experience, right?
Right.
Of course, I'm the oldest, and so I was the test dummy, and I went through things a little differently than the rest of them. And
Yes.
we've all turned out so drastically different from one
Mhm.
another. And I know that's not just my family, that's a
No.
thing.
Yes.
And I've also met people who come to me for they had the best childhood, but there was that one time that mom made some backhanded comment about like what they wore, or what they ate, or a comment that they made, like, and it just stuck with them. And for them, that's very traumatic because their whole life was safe and everything was perfect and they had all of these things, right? Their version of what that looks like. But there was that one time,
Hmm.
and then they have taken that and used it as an excuse their whole entire life, right? So it comes in different waves. Like that for me would be nothing. Like, okay, but for someone else, it could be like it could have like, I'm never going to get married ever because when I was a kid, my dad told me blah, blah, blah about my mom. And I never want anyone to say that when to me it looked like their marriage was perfect, but I really know the truth. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many layers to childhood trauma. It can be so minute to very traumatic. And it's not a judgment of where you were at as a child or what you experienced. The fact that you feel this type of energy in your body, period, there's a reason why. And there's an opportunity to address it and heal it.
Absolutely. That one was a good example of how perception is so different
Mm,
according to each individual, and
yeah,
how perception can be skewed because to have one out of 1,000 times, the weight of the one really is a very skewed perspective to say, mom talked to me 1,000 times in a very supportive, affirming, and loving way. And this one time, which was probably an off day for my mother, and my mother was a person. And without that perspective, there's just like, that's such a shift. And a person carries that as a wound. Um, Probably because mom was so loving the rest of the time that this
mhm,
outlier thing is like, what? Um, and it's good to know,
yeah,
um, that that shifted in perspective, and a shift in perspective is a miracle in so many ways. When you can shift the perspective and you can really take in consideration the person on the other side,
right.
um, depending on the situations, to come to an understanding that every other person is having their own experience too,
Exactly. I really
unpacking.
feel like perception is a definitely a thing. Where we are located at Vibes, we're in the same building as a recovery center for addiction. And there have been a couple of times because they all gather outside of our office door and you can hear them through the walls and the door. Um, and the times that I've heard them is so in alignment with the times that I've had clients come in and have work done around childhood trauma. Like, well, when I was a kid, I was drinking a beer when I was 10 years old with my dad, just like, because he would say, be a man, have a beer. And this addiction began. And I just, you know, people come in to see us and then I hear these stories and I think, wow, we've all suffered on some level or another. it isn't always having to do with your parents. It could be your teacher.
Yeah.
It could be a kid at school. It could be a
Mhm.
grandparent. It could be a long lost relative that popped in once in your life and you've never seen them again. Like it
Or neighbors.
or a car accident. I mean, it could be anything, right? And the most important thing about talking about childhood trauma for me, it's a normal topic that I talk about on the regular, with myself, with you, with people I know, and my clients, because everyone has some level of childhood trauma, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's energy in our body that is creating some kind of havoc that we may not even be aware of. I was not even I was well into my 30s before I realized the significance of my childhood and the repercussions of what that was doing to my adult self. And I really had to get real and raw with myself and address it and acknowledge the things that happen, instead of disassociate, instead of avoid, instead of be busy all of the time so I don't have to feel it, instead of be successful, instead of all of these things that I put on my plate so I didn't have to look at it. And this is happening all over because it's uncomfortable to talk about.
Mm.
Nobody wants to unpack their childhood. But if you get to a point that's so uncomfortable in your life and you don't know why, I say go to your childhood. It started there.
Yeah.
And have the courage to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. Have the courage for yourself, not for anybody else. Have the courage to heal that energy inside of your body so you can feel better. It is a challenging topic. It is not one that I take lightly discussing,
No.
but it is the number, if not the number one reason why I do what I do. Because every experience I had in my life was a result, good, bad, or different, by the experiences I had as a child. So when you're uncomfortable, look there. Do you have anything you want to add?
I do. I want to, in my experience and what I've watched working with clients, I've developed a trust in what's bubbling up in a person or in the body. Um, so I want to pass that on. You can trust if there's a memory that that's what's come up for that situation. You don't have to go on a witch hunt. You don't really have to hunt it down. The body is just, it rises the things, there's a memory automatically. And I trust whatever's bubbling up in that moment, it's going to do this. Also know that the body cannot overhaul your childhood quickly. It needs to be done in layers. Onions, peel back the onion, peel back the onion. So a lot of times people will say this verbiage, and I'm sure you've heard it. I already thought that I dealt with that. I thought I had dealt with that. What? This is coming back up again? Yes, because perhaps it was so painful we could only do a little bit at a time, sand off the spikes. So to trust that it's not a one and done process either. And you can proceed forward with it that way, and it doesn't have to be rushed. Healing ought not to be rushed. It's not a race to
Right.
get these things done. So trusting that the memories come up. The other thing I want to bring up is a lot of times people won't remember their childhood because it's actually being obscured by the trauma. That there actually were positive things. There were memories that were happy. People say, I don't remember a happy thing about my childhood yet. You just don't remember a happy thing yet.
Right.
That those, once the trauma's being healed, other memories can bubble up that were not as difficult.
Right.
And there can be other things that will come up after your childhood. And that's the beautiful thing about healing, is that we will move. We go through the swamp, and move beyond the swamp. And then there's other things on the other side of
Yeah. It's called freedom
that. Yes.
and joy.
Yes. And light, brightness that can come in when you open up the dark closet. The light gets in, the dark doesn't seep out.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, there's this quote that came to mind recently that said, sometimes the brightest light was in the darkest places.
Yes. I love that quote. I actually have that written in my book. It's a reminder.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So good.
Mhm.
Well, what a fun topic. Fun?
Yes.
Fun?
Yes.
It's fun appropriate to say?
I think it's a
I'm all
powerful,
about
fun
digging
one.
in deep.
Yes.
So that is fun for me. Like if I can go in deep enough to pull that sucker out and let's like get rid of this so I don't have to carry it anymore, I'm all about it. Not for everyone,
Nope.
but I believe in you. All of you.
Mhm. Unpack the backpack.
Yeah. I love that. So next week we'll talk about
Reparent.
reparenting
Yep.
and inner child work. And then the following week we'll talk about generational healing. Ooh,
I'm
that one's good.
excited.
Good stuff. So, what a great topic. Thank you to you wanderers, everybody who has participated and held space and been here through the show and supported yourself in that way. It's really nice to have you and receive the feedback and participation. If you have a show topic that you're interested in, make sure you email us at connect@soulwanderings.com. And again, if you want to learn more about Natalie and myself, visit soulwanderings.com. And we will be back here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everyone. We sure love you guys. We're sure grateful for you. So good.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Good night.